get things kicked off, we want to talk about search. That's going to be one of the focuses of our presentation today. On our last presentation at the last APS show, there was a lot of interesting discussion that kicked up around the relationship between Apple search ads and ASO and how that data overlapped and where it didn't. So one of the things that we wanted to do was we wanted to dive into that a little bit more because it seemed like it was really interesting for the audience. So let's talk about search. A little bit about us, in case you don't already know. So, I founded GummyCube in 2009 to really focus on unlocking the black box of the App Store and Play Store. Back then, there were no real tools to figure out how the App Store and Play Store worked, so we built some of the first tools to do that. We're actually the first integrated ASO company in North America. And what that means is we have experience not only aggregating data and building technology, but we have experience on the execution side as well. And when you look at a lot of our insights, and when you look at what I think are some of the errors in some of the insights that you can read on the internet a lot of the time, it's really because you learn a lot from execution. You learn a lot from building technology and aggregating data, but really the value is in kind of proving out how those things work together, proving out how the data works when you're using it. And I think we have a lot of insights there. I've personally been in the mobile space for over 20 years. I founded one of the very first mobile app publishers back in 2009, and the world has changed a lot since then. But one of the things that really hasn't changed is that web and mobile are very different. Mobile's a unique platform. I think a lot of people compare ASO to SEO, and I feel like while the goals are the same, the way that you execute, the data that you use can be very different. And so we try to bring a lot of that experience to the table when we talk about App Store optimization. So first, we want to talk about what comes first, the chicken or the egg. And in this case, the chicken is SEM, or Apple search ads, paid search marketing, or ASO. And this was an area that invoked a lot of discussion during our last panel. So first, it goes without saying that there is a symbiotic relationship between paid search and App Store optimization. You execute ASO very well, you build relevancy, that drives paid search results, and it can accelerate your ASO. However, ASO comes first. You can't buy your way to the top of the organic rankings because at the end of the day, without a good ASO implementation, without solid metadata and targeting, channels like Apple search ads and Google App Install campaigns just aren't going to work. Paid search does help organic performance, but it's not possible to achieve maximum efficiency from paid search campaigns unless you execute and continue to execute your App Store optimization very well over time. Next, I want to talk a little bit about search ads data, because in the search ads data set, there are a lot of good things that, at least at GummyCube and personally, that we really like. But there are a lot of things, some data sets within search ads that for the purpose of ASO, the way you're executing ASO, we don't like as much. And so we want to break those apart a little bit. Number one, we like the fact that we get more data. Engagement attribution, if you have search ads hooked up to an attribution tool, is useful because you can start to understand quantitatively which keywords drive more valuable users into your app and how those users behave. You can't do that, obviously, purely organically because of the data that Apple and Google will not provide you. However, it's important not to misuse this data when you're making choices about how to optimize organically. Because at the end of the day, organic keyword targeting is free. And broader ranking has a lot of benefits. One of the things that always comes up when I'm talking to clients is, people are very used to operating Apple search ads. Maybe they're not as used to operating App Store optimization. And they say, well, Dave, I know these keywords work, so why don't we just focus on them? And they're concerned about cost and user quality. And my response is user quality is very important. But with organic, you're not paying for every keyword the same way that you do with ASA. And in fact, the more data you send Apple, the better off you are, and Google as well. Conversion data is also important. With search ads, obviously, you get conversion data per keyword. And what we found is that in many cases, a 1% improvement in conversion at a keyword level can be the difference between a top 10 ranking and a top 5 ranking. And so when you're thinking about A/B testing and you're thinking about conversion optimization, search ads in particular is a really wonderful tool because it can allow you to think outside of just the store listing, and it can help you understand whether your ranking is a conversion optimization issue or whether it's an issue of other people, buying a certain percentage of clicks that's helping them rank better than you, depending on who else is advertising on that keyword. What we don't like the broad application of popularity scores, which Apple gives you inside their search ads console, as being directly transferable to App Store optimization. We just flat out don't agree with that. If you talk to Apple, generally they will tell you we didn't really design ASA data for ASO. And we find the data anecdotally interesting, but we don't really think that they're a direct signal of potential volume for a keyword for a particular app. And there are a lot of reasons why, and I'll get into that in a moment. But context is everything. And in the case of Apple search ads, in the case of ASO, context is your particular app, which is going to be different than other apps in terms of how it converts and performs. Now, there are some important things to consider when you're looking at this data. One, when you think about search ads data, it's designed because Apple knows you can change your keywords and bids daily in Apple search ads. They created their ASA platform specifically for this behavior. Second is that volume opportunity for an app is really tied to relevance and conversion. Share of voice in Apple search ads and organic rank can be dialed by these factors. If you're less relevant for a keyword, no matter how much you're willing to bid or how well your campaign's structured, Apple is going to send you less traffic. If you convert less well organically, that sends signals to Apple that you're less relevant for a keyword. And of course, your metadata also plays a role there from a qualification perspective. The other thing that's important to understand, if you're looking at this as a volume indicator, search ads represents about 20 to 30% of the total opportunity. When you think about a search ads and the volume it took away from organic, absolutely. There are some people that click the paid search link, and it did take away some volume from the top ranking organic app in a listing. However, only about 20 to 30%. And this isn't so different from the behavior actually when you're running SEM campaigns on the web. Most people are looking for the organic result and not the paid result. Some people will click the paid result. You also need to understand the opportunity size for your app isn't necessarily comparative to other apps. And again, that goes back to how you convert. You have a greater opportunity, and Apple will give you more traffic, both organically as well as in search ads, if you convert well. You have similar coefficients going on the Google Play side. Works a little bit differently, but I know I'm saying Apple and App Store a lot, but it's very similar for Google Play as well. When people look at search ads data and they're saying, well, how can I leverage search ads to validate whether a keyword has volume for me? Well, you've got to be careful how you validate. And it's important that you kind of see the forest through the trees. Number one is that because of how search ads is structured, relevancy is far more important than bid. And apps that are more relevant for keywords are going to unlock much more traffic for a keyword. Too many people, at least that I chat with, assume that if their app doesn't receive meaningful volume, that's a general indicator for all apps, meaning, hey, it didn't work for me in search ads, so it's probably not good for me organically in terms of volume or scale. That's actually not a correct assumption. Unless you have 100% share of voice when you're bidding on a search ads campaign, you really can't truly know what the max volume potential is. And to some extent, Apple will give you some data about that. But the reality is that if you don't convert well on a keyword, if you're not performing well, your kind of lack of scale on a given keyword is more related to the fact your app isn't converting. And that's the problem you have to go and solve if you want to really understand how to drive your audience on that keyword or that group of keywords. Now, we want to go into the data science of this. We have a lot of data to share about kind of why we think these things. And number one, we always talk about kind of public data sets in the ASO world. And, we know there are a lot of tools out there and they get their data sets from various places. Some look to the web, some do look to Apple search ads, some look to other places. We won't comment on a specific tool. But generally, there are areas where this kind of public data can fail you. And it's important to kind of break this down by keyword volume, actually. Most people and most tools are going to agree about the highest and lowest volume terms. There are a lot of high volume terms that are going to be obvious to anyone who looks at them that there's a lot of volume. It's a popular brand, or maybe it's a category level keyword that drives a lot of demand. But where public data really fails is what we call for middle class terms. Terms that, if you look at a score of 1 to 10, might have a score of 4 to 8, where individually you may not prioritize them one-on-one. But as a group, if you can rank for a lot of these terms, they could deliver 50 to 60% of your search volume in the App Store if you pursue a broad ranking strategy. And so, there are a lot of reasons for this. One is just there's a lot more volatility when you go into kind of these mid-range terms. And a lot of tools, frankly, really don't do a good job normalizing that data. And so you're not able to understand how those terms are really affecting your optimization. And also, many apps aren't focused on broad relevance. And as a result of that, typical tool data will discount value from these keywords. So for example, if you're looking at an app and the person optimizing that app has really only focused on 3 or 4 keywords for the life of the app, of course the results are going to indicate that the app is not getting a lot of volume from anywhere else. And there's a lot of value here. I mentioned terms with moderate volume actually make up 50 to 60% of total search queries. Focusing on a small handful of high volume terms only can leave up to half the opportunity on the table. And that requires ranking for a larger number of keywords to really take advantage of the opportunity. And that doesn't mean you have to give up your core. A lot of people say, well, if I focus broad, does that mean I'm not going to rank very well for the 3 or 4 terms that strategically I care about? And the answer is no, because at the end of the day, most apps rank for far more keywords than their people who are marketing them realize. And optimizing for the store, it's more like an e-commerce engine, not like web search. So as you update your optimization over time, if you understand how to do this correctly, you really have the ability to rank for more terms over time, instead of just trading out one term versus another. And of course, the cadence of your updates and how you structure metadata that really works together well is key. And you have to have accurate volume indicators to do that. And at GummyCube, of course, we have our own technology that does that. We just disagree with some other folks frequently in good spirit. But the reality is that having accurate data is important, and understanding the cadence to how to structure that metadata is important. Now, whenever we talk about broad optimization and talk about this more like it's an e-commerce activity, a lot of people will come and say, well, I've heard just a few terms drive most of the volume. And to us, I touched on this a little bit earlier, that's almost a self-fulfilling prophecy, because a lot of folks who say that, and you may hear that on the internet, or other people might say things like that. The reality is that it's all cause and effect. If a marketer spends their time only focusing on a few keywords, it really is a foregone conclusion that their volume will only come from those keywords, or a small set of keywords. Success from broad optimization, to really understand, does this work or does this not work, needs to be measured by looking at apps that actually implement these kinds of strategies and have relevant proof points. If you have an example where there was some degree of bias and all we're focused on is one keyword like bingo or cards or whatever the keyword is, you're not really going to have the data set to make that kind of analysis. And if you're just trying 1 or 2 other keywords, you're not really going broad enough to analyze if a large group of other keywords will add to your volume. I always say this, and I love everyone in the industry, but sound bites from people who believe something doesn't work, and they've been implementing a certain way for their career, or over the course of their management of an app, without testing the strategy, really aren't valid. You have to have a full data set to say something doesn't work. Now, there are some real ways to provide a case study about strategies like this. And while we think that there are good and bad ways to use Apple Search Ads data, one of the great things that Apple Search Ads gives us is it gives us the ability to implement these strategies and get some additional attribution to understand how they're working. And one thing is clear, that because the same traffic is running through the keyword, whether they're paid or organic clicks, if it works in search ads and drives more volume, it'll probably help you on the organic side. Now, first of all, when we look at search ads, we want to prove our point about these middle-class keywords. And what we did when we're running campaigns, and this is an example of a campaign that we ran for a very large brand, like some of them that you're seeing on the side of the screen here. Number one, we expanded targeted keywords by about 3 to 4x in coordination with ASO efforts. This included restructuring the campaign. It included adding a lot of long tail terms. It included looking at the App Store optimization metadata and implementing a more broad optimization to make sure that we'd be relevant for all these terms we wanted to target, to make sure that we get the traffic from these terms and that we wouldn't come to false conclusions as a result of Apple simply capping our share of voice because they didn't think we were relevant enough. When we did this, average spend increased about 50%, but average installs increased about more than 100%. So there was incredible efficiency in the campaign. We were able to decrease CPI 40%, and ROAS, return on investment, actually increased 500% for new users, excluding retargeting. And this is a campaign these are campaigns that spend a lot of dollars on a daily basis marketing. Organic coefficient doubled to a 4-to-1 ratio. And really, a lot of this was achieved because there's less competition and lower cost when you implement a broad strategy and when you don't exclude middle-class keywords. And, we're not advocating not focusing on keywords that are important to you. There are always going to be certain keywords that are strategically important, very high volume, that you have to go after. But we want to make sure that when you do that, you're not excluding the middle of the tail and the long tail, because it can help you and it does add up. Now, this impacts a lot of things when you think about it, both the efficacy of data, when you look at whatever tool you're using, as well as the strategy that you use, whether you're going narrow or whether you're going broad from an ASO perspective. We all know that some tools purport to understand how many downloads a keyword drives for a target application. And these estimates, from our understanding, in many cases appear to be driven by an understanding of what keywords an app ranks for. That is somewhat limited. A lot of tools look at keywords they know you're trying to target. You plug those keywords in and they track them. And really the same discrepancies that we illustrated in this presentation can throw off those estimations. If your estimated download volume is disproportionately assigned to higher keywords instead of being spread across all your rankings, you're not going to get good data about which keywords are driving volume for you. If you're looking at your tool and you're looking at 30 or 40 keywords and they're saying all your traffic comes from 30 or 40 keywords, that's probably not entirely accurate. And that's important to keep in mind. Most tools are only allocating installs to keywords that you're tracking. Now, you can validate this. There are ways to validate this. Google is actually getting a lot better about sharing search data inside their console. And as a result of that, you can actually log in and you can see some of the top keywords and the impressions and traffic they're driving you. And then you can see kind of an other bucket for all of the long tail keywords that are driving traffic for you. In most cases, for apps that we optimize, that other bucket can be 40 or 50% of total traffic, because we understand how to go after the keywords that are going to be strategic, that your organization really cares about, as well as keywords that are going to drive a very significant volume as they add up over time. And honestly, if there's a significant mismatch between the estimates from the tool you're using and what Google indicates, you just junk the tool, walk away, because Google is not going to be wrong about the data that they're presenting you. So always validate that kind of data, and always assume that when you see something in a tool that it might be an estimate, not real data that actually comes from Apple or Google. Because Apple and Google, aside from what you can see in their consoles, don't have a special API where they're sharing download data with third parties that we all don't know about already. Remember, the other thing that's important is when you do look at your Google data, it doesn't show you missed opportunities. It simply reflects your strategy. So if you've implemented a strategy where you're just focusing on 10 or 15 keywords over time, as an example, and you look at Google and you see all your traffic is coming from a subset of those keywords, that's not because there's no traffic anywhere else. It's because Google's just reflecting what you've been implementing over whatever period of time you've been leveraging that strategy. So it's important to look at that data and understand it's reflective of the past, but there may be new opportunities in the future to expand. Two, pay close attention to Google's other bucket. Google's other bucket, like I said, in a lot of cases for apps we optimize, can equal 40 to 50% of total installs from search. It can be huge, and it can be driven by hundreds of keywords that you may not even know about that you pick up over the course of many optimizations. And so that's another important thing to take a look at and keep in mind. Now, there are a lot of spillover impacts beyond simple targeting. Number one, ultimate rankings, right? The ultimate keywords that you rank for. We have seen that driving more conversion data into the store seems to improve overall rankings and overall distribution in the store. We've said this before, Apple and Google use e-commerce algorithms in their stores, not just simple web search algorithms. And it seems like the more click data that gets sent to the platforms, the better an app might rank and move up. And, you know, this goes to the strategy that we were talking about earlier. It seems that apps that rank for fewer keywords, that adopt narrow targeting strategies, are at a disadvantage. And that's because just like Apple and Google will merchandise you through their stores based on where you convert well, it seems that they also understand what keywords are related to each other. And if you perform well on a group of keywords that's similar with a similar audience, that data might actually help you rank for your core keywords faster over time. It's also, and so, you know, that just speaks to how these are digital stores that we're working in, not kind of a web search environment. The other thing that's important to understand is there's an impact on conversion here too. When you're looking at keyword volume data and you're not looking at kind of a broader set of data, you may not be getting all of the information you need to build effective value propositions on your screenshots to prioritize features in certain ways, and also to make sure that users are ultimately converting in your app when you're writing your metadata. We work with Sephora, they're one of our partners, and you know, when we took over Sephora's ASO, we discovered that their descriptions weren't really aligned with the way that users were searching for features in their store, in the App Store and Play Store. And with a couple simple experiments that we were able to run with Google A/B testing, we adjusted the positioning of their short description, and we hit in a variant that got up to a 44% performance increase in conversion. We hadn't even touched the screenshots or the creative yet. So having volume data that is accurate and understanding, you know, broad ways that users might be searching for your app or describing the features in your app is really critical to informing you how you might author some of this metadata and position content in your screenshots. This is just an example of A/B testing on metadata. It's also important to look at kind of tactical versus strategic points in optimization. You know, I've said this before, but I think it's valid to say again, it's worthwhile saying again, Apple search ads popularity scores are like day trading in the stock market. They're going to show you something once it's popular, but they're not going to provide predictive trends for strategy. And popularity scores don't indicate how long something is or will be popular. You know, part of ASO is about holding long for big capital gains. There are some keywords you're not going to move away from, and there are some groups of keywords that you're going to continually optimize towards. You're not, you know, changing your bids or changing your keywords every day like you would in a paid search campaign. And as I mentioned, this can have a big impact on conversion. You know, you think about the goals of ASO. One of the big goals of ASO are to create relevancy for your app, to speed up indexation and merchandising throughout the store. And obviously that leads to getting more downloads and users. It takes time to index though. So you need to know what's going to have volume over a period of time, potentially of several weeks, not just today or tomorrow. You want to make sure what you're targeting is still going to be valuable down the road. ASO is ultimately not just about A/B testing keywords. In fact, if you change your keywords too rapidly, you're going to rank for different keywords over time, but you won't rank for more keywords over time. And so you want to let that indexation period occur, and you can't change your keywords as fast as you would in a paid campaign. So just to wrap up, some conclusions. One, we acknowledge and understand, you know, there's a relationship between paid search and ASA, as well in App Store optimization that can be very valuable. Search ads data can be useful in a number of ways, you know, for engagement attribution, for conversion data. But while popularity scores are interesting, there are many reasons why on the surface, if you just take that data, it's not an exact fit for ASO. And Apple didn't design it with the same context or intention around execution. Your app performance and volume on search ads may not necessarily serve as conclusive evidence of keyword volume, because Apple is going to rate limit the amount of traffic or your share of voice on a keyword based on how relevant they view you for that keyword. And they value that relevancy more than you're willing to bid. Every app has a different relevancy score that drives inventory. Your ASO is a major factor in determining relevancy. So you can't put the cart before the horse. ASO needs to come first, in our view. And obviously focusing on broad indexation and what we call middle class keywords are very important. Half of the potential volume for probably 70% of the apps in the store exists in these keywords. And if you ignore them, you're leaving a lot on the table. And ultimately, more click data means better merchandising over time. If you're struggling to rank for a keyword that's high volume or high difficulty, ranking for more similar keywords can actually help you, because it will send more conversion data into the algorithm. And make sure, regardless of the tool you use, you're validating any data you see using whatever dashboard information is available, especially if claims are being made about downloads per keyword, because this is an area where, anybody who's publishing that data should have an asterisk next to it saying it's an estimate. Anyway, it's been great chatting with you. That's my presentation. I'm more than happy to take any Q&A in the last few minutes that we have. And again, thank you.
Dave, I think have you got Swapcar? We've got a couple of questions.
Yes.
One I'd be interested in is, so what, we've obviously seen a lot of external changes going on over the last year. Lockdowns, Corona, how has that changed kind of behavior in the App Store, both in terms of, the keywords, or, are users installing more apps? What have you seen from your sort of neck of the woods over on the West Coast?
Yeah, so there are a couple of things that we've seen. Number one is that productivity apps and utility apps have become a lot more popular. And that's because a lot of people are working from home now. They're downloading them from their own devices while they're working from home. And you're seeing different changes and trends within those categories. Categories where Jobs apps or Microsoft Office might have been very popular. You're seeing apps like Microsoft Teams and Zooms get the top rankings now. And that's just reflective of the environment that we're in right now. Next, when you look at user behavior, we are seeing changes in user behavior, but not because the core users are changing behavior, but because there are users who are not usually downloading these apps, and maybe they're more casual or they don't know how to use them. A lot of people are saying, well, our engagement is weird and our monetization is different. Well, your core users are still behaving the same way, but this new volume of users might not be, and that's changing the aggregates.
Got it. And I suppose as well for you as a business, how have you and your clients evolved to working remotely over the last year? I can imagine there was a lot more, collaboration on, as we've all found, on, whether it's on the whiteboard or sticky notes, client meetings, and, we've now having to adjust to, working in a new way. How has that gone?
So we've adjusted. I can say our pets love it, even though they might be sick of us at this point. But, one of the things that I think a lot of people have told me is that while working from home, they feel like they're more productive, because as opposed to a lot of the drive-by meetings that happen when they're in kind of a big office working environment, they're actually spending more time focusing on the work they're doing that might take a couple hours of time to complete, the slide decks, responding to email faster, presentations, proposals, that kind of stuff. And so, people like it more. And I feel like over time, particularly in Silicon Valley, with what's happened with Twitter and what Facebook is proposing, where they think half of their workforce is going to be working from home long term, I think it's really going to create an environment where an office is a place to come and collaborate and have meetings or meet with clients. But a lot of people, I think, especially in the technology industry, are going to accept working from home as just a normal thing. Productivity has gone up. From a management standpoint, I think it's been good.
Great. And in terms of GummyCube's been doing ASO for a while, how has what you offer evolved? I noticed on your site there's a lot more maybe I haven't looked at for a while. There's a lot more talk of the data cube and the tools as well as the service layer. How, what's your perspective of how has it changed how you work with clients now compared to, a few years ago?
So I think the biggest changes have been around a really aggressive conversion optimization. I mean, in the very early days of ASO, everyone talked about search optimization, right? And conversion is so important because it not only affects the efficiency of all of your traffic hitting your page, but when people really want to understand why don't I rank in the top 5 for a keyword, it's actually because of your conversion rate on that keyword, which is separate from what's going on in your store listing. So, A/B testing has evolved a lot. It's become something that takes a lot of effort because you're doing it in many different places throughout the user acquisition funnel. We actually, just a year and a half ago, launched a brand new platform called SplitCube, where we can, in addition to what you do with search ads, creative set testing, and what you can do with testing in the Google Play Store, you can actually build virtual pages and send some paid traffic to them and run A/B test and experiment that way. So, right now, I think we're the only company that has kind of full market intelligence on the search side, as well as an A/B testing platform that are linked together. That's a big change. The other thing is that we now have, an entire media team that's running search ads campaigns and that's doing paid marketing, because a lot of our clients, once we're very successful with ASO, want to understand what are the coefficients that exist between our paid channels and organic. How do they influence one another? And the attribution work on that is challenging because you don't see a direct line all the time when you're looking at an adjust or apps flyer. And so our team comes in, we can manage that, and we've been helping partners kind of pull those pieces apart and build the story.
Great. And we heard from someone this morning saying, at least in Europe, clients a few years ago, yeah, ASO was not high on their list of priorities, even for apps. They didn't really understand it. There weren't many people in-house doing ASO, and they'd seen a big change, maybe in the last year. It's a lot more, up on the kind of marketing ladder in terms of what people realize they need to do. Are you seeing a sort of similar thing on the West Coast and other places you're working?
Yeah, I would say that in the last year and a half or so, ASO has become mainstream, right? Every organization has someone who's going to be responsible for this, and whether they're doing it themselves or working with a partner or an agency. And I think at the end of the day, it's partially driven because paid marketing, user acquisition has always been a really big expense for anyone in the mobile world. And as people started thinking about A/B testing and realizing how much improvements in conversion bring down their cost of acquisition, more and more people have started to dig into all the other aspects of App Store optimization as well and get really curious how the algorithms work, how to grow their organics. And I think that's been a good thing. I think, 3 or 4 years ago, you talk about ASO, at a big enterprise organization, and, in their marketing team, they may not know what that is, but today that would probably not be true.
Great. Okay. And how can people get in touch with you? I guess go to the GummyCube site would be the best thing. Maybe we'll drop a link in here, and yeah.
Please feel free to visit GummyCube.com. We had a great rebranding. We have a new mascot, a Shiba named Cinnamon, which is nice. And you can email me at dave@gummycube.com. You can check us out on Twitter at GummyCube, on LinkedIn at GummyCube, or just shoot an email to info@gummycube.com, and one of our biz dev guys will get back to you.
Great. Okay, well, thanks for joining us, Dave. It's your morning. It's end of the day in Berlin, but glad we could get together again. And really great to have you involved. Sorry we couldn't see you in person in Berlin, but glad we could get some of the benefit of your knowledge today. And thanks a lot.
Of course. We'll see you next year for sure.
Okay, great. All right. Thanks, Dave. Cheers.
Bye. Cheers.